I think is really helping them grow is how responsive they are.
Internal search as well as spaces. And I think spaces probably is the easier one to start with.
Every single bullet point in a response from Perplexity has a little citation marker with a number in it.
I think most of us like Perplexity because there's no ads on it.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today is October 24th, 2024. Hard to say. And this is the Daily AI Show Live. You're listening and watching us live. Hopefully, if not, you're watching us on replay, wherever you get your different podcasts. You may be getting us on Apple, on Spotify. You may be watching us on YouTube. And today, what we're going to be talking about are OMGs, as it said on the thumbnail there, Perplexity's new tools. And once again, Perplexity has come out with some really innovative, different product enhancements that I think really are starting to define, not just me, all of us, starting to define the direction that Perplexity wants to go. And I think this is a really interesting time in AI right now, not just for Perplexity, but we just saw this with Claude as well. It's kind of like when all this started a year ago, it's like, oh, you have these sort of players, but they're all sort of similar. And then ChatGPT, OpenAI rather, is clearly started to make some waves, right, and go a certain direction. And then everybody was like, oh, but there's also this thing, Anthropic, whatever. And then, Claude comes out and it has their artifacts and things that they were doing like live. And now Canvas does that a little bit as well. And you think, oh, okay, they're definitely going towards maybe that enterprise type thing. And now we have Perplexity coming out with what they call spaces, as well as their the other part called search. I just missed it off the top of my screen here. But we'll talk about all of that. Really talk about
knowledge search.
Yeah. Internet knowledge, thank you. Internal knowledge, excuse me, search. So let's kind of dive into that. What is Perplexity doing and how are they sort of making a pivot, a change of direction here a little bit and starting to reveal maybe their bigger plans for what Perplexity is going to do? I have my ideas on that, but before I jump into that, maybe Andy, we'll jump over to you first today. I try to mix it up. What's your take here on what Perplexity is sort of bringing to the table these days?
Yeah. So first of all, for those of you who don't use Perplexity on a daily basis or haven't followed Perplexity in the sort of the landscape of all of the players in AI, first, where does the word perplexity come from? You've probably never heard it before, but it's a very memorable one. Perplexity is a measure of how well a probability model, like an AI model, predicts samples. And lower perplexity, it's like if the output is unperplexed, then it's better. It's more reasonable and more accurate. If the probability model predicts something that's a little way out there, then it's perplexed. So it makes sense, and I think it was a very clever thing. Let's remind everyone that Perplexity was launched by three great co-founders. Aravind Srinivas is the name that we often hear because he's a vocal proponent of the path that Perplexity is taking. They started it out to become a scholarly AI, one that would provide citations rather than just hallucinations. Let me just read a quote here from Aravind about what Perplexity is. I'm building a product that helps me and people around me become smarter every day and raises the knowledge capital of the planet. Okay. So that's in alignment with what I think they're doing now as they release these new products. So I just today, like yesterday, they released, the Mac OS application, and Karl mentioned it on our Slack channel behind the scenes, and he has that, and I added it this morning. Really slick application right on my Mac desktop that I'm looking at right now. In addition, what Brian was mentioning are some tools that provide for a collaborative knowledge sharing method. So that's what Aravind is aiming toward. And who's going to be the most likely users of knowledge sharing where multiple people can put documentation into a space and share it and have the most advanced search capabilities against that alongside search against the web, that's Perplexity. They're reducing perplexity in the world, and that's their mission. So I think it's really aligned with where Perplexity will find its way. There's enterprise services that go beyond the consumer services that we see in ChatGPT and so on, from OpenAI, from Google, from Microsoft. Everyone's out there offering these things. I think Perplexity stands a better than reasonable chance of being the dominant player in the enterprise market because of the capacity of its web search, coupled with now local RAG system and collaborative knowledge sharing system. All of that's right in alignment with what Aravin's vision is about this thing.
The other thing that I think is really helping them grow is how responsive they are. And part of that is Aravin's presence. I read him, follow him on X. So that's mainly what I'm referring to, but he is super responsive. I'm not sure he sleeps, right? Like, I mean, there's, for someone who's actually has a pretty serious and intensive job, he's responding to a lot of people. And like, people will say, hey, would you, it would be really great if you would add Notion docs when they're talking about the kinds of docs that you can search. And he's saying coming, that's already in the list, right? Like those kinds of things. You don't see Google people doing that. I mean, not even Logan, Logan does it a little bit for the devs, because he's the dev relation coordinator. But this is really interesting. Like, they're very, very responsive. Another example that I just want to give quick is when you are searching Perplexity, when you're using Perplexity and you're uploading a file, not to a space, just a regular search, right? It lets you, if you click on the little paper icon, upload 3 different documents. And it lets you delete one of them, right? Like, hello, OpenAI and Anthropic. Like, Perplexity is understanding that at some point, you might want to move on from those 3 documents, but still be in your thing. Like, you can clear them all, you can delete one, like those small kinds of usability features I find in Perplexity.
Yeah, he's got that, not he, but Perplexity's got that, startup advantage, right? That, sort of incubator advantage, which is they can have less barriers between him speaking on X as opposed to maybe something in Google, where there'd be so many levels of like, is this okay? Am I allowed to do this? It's a massive machine, Google. Or Alphabet, I guess it is technically, but it's a massive machine. So it's a lot harder for somebody to jump on and know carte blanche that they can put this on X without worrying about repercussions. So even if I'm a higher up executive in Google, unless somebody has specifically defined that as part of my job, that you will keep people updated and make them happy on X, like, that's a hard thing to do. But in his case, he's the CEO, right? He's the one of the founders. And I agree with you, Beth. This is a classic case of building a personal, what am I trying to say? A personal brand that's in service of the company. Now, for those that don't know, I ran our LinkedIn strategy department at scale for several years before I moved over and now I run our AI strategy department. But I still work a lot in the LinkedIn side of things. And what I did for years was help CEOs and executives and executive teams build their personal brand strategy. Now, why were they doing that? Well, on LinkedIn, we knew that the company page just was not going to get as many views. And one thing you can definitely do if you want to build your business and improve ROI is create a personal brand strategy. People want to hear, to think and feel like they have a part of the process and the growth process, and they want to know that they can peek behind the curtain from time to time. And that's something that he's obviously doing very well on X, and he is growing a following there, as well as probably other people at Perplexity, kind of like we see Sam Altman do sometimes with OpenAI. But this is a really big advantage, because what happens is we become fans of his. And so we said, well, we want to support him because I love the way he talks about this on as his personal brand on X, which then makes me a fan and want to stay with Perplexity, even crucially, if Perplexity makes a misstep, even if they upset me and do something as a product update that actually goes backwards for me. Maybe it's the files, right, Beth? Or maybe they allowed you to do 3 and they roll it back to 1 for whatever the reasons are. I'm much more likely to stick with them because of the personal brand strategy that they have, not necessarily the corporate brand. It's important too. So I love this, and it's something that usually these smaller, right, millions of dollars, smaller, more nimble companies are able to pull off. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Okay, I didn't ever say who was here, but Beth, Andy, Karl is here. I'm Brian. Sorry, I never said it at the top of the show, but that's who we have. We have the 4 of us. And so let's dig in a little bit into the internal search as well as Spaces. And I think Spaces probably is the easier one to start with. So I don't know, Karl or Beth, or I can do it. Do we want to just kind of give a quick overview of what Spaces are in terms of Perplexity, and then we'll dive into all the different use cases for it, including our own show. I mean, there's a lot of use cases there, and I have one for education I want to share as well.
Karl, go for it.
Oh, okay. I was going to talk more.
Yeah, I saw the note in there. Karl's like, I'll do internal search. Okay, you do internal search. I'll do it really quick with Spaces. It's really easy, right? So they have created a way in Perplexity. It's not revolutionary, but essentially you can create a space, and it's kind of just exactly what it sounds like, is a partitioned place in Perplexity where you can upload local documents, a RAG system essentially, but also work against using a language model to enhance that information. So like it's sort of the best of Perplexity attached to this local RAG system. Now we've had chat-based, and we've had many other solutions that still exist that are good solutions for a RAG system. What Perplexity is saying is like, hey, if you're in an enterprise setting and you are working in your department, maybe you're working cross departments or whatever, it's very likely, maybe HR, that would be an easy one, right? That you want to input certain documents with crucial version control and document control of those, like who can access what, so user control. And you want to have those HR documents in there so that people can ask questions about against them. But let's take an example here. Okay, it's HR policy about upcoming benefits renewal. Now, HR departments are going to have to put in a lot of information that's relevant to that company about we're moving from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Cigna. Okay, that's happening. Everybody's got to take a PPO or an HMO or whatever, right? But what HR might want with a Perplexity space is for their internal employees to not only be able to ask questions against what are our upcoming changes to our healthcare policy for our company, but also, do I want to dive deeper into perhaps what's on the internet about Cigna or whatever, right? And so I want to bring those two together. Sorry, Beth.
So I want to jump in because I think in some ways that overlaps with the internal document search, and I want to distinguish them. And one of the ways that Spaces is used is as a collaboration, right? I mean, that's one of the key places that you could do, and there are all these stories coming out about people who are working together on a group project or have a research commonality between them, and it doesn't have to be in a like they all work for the HR department of a company, or they all work for a company and need to access just one specific thing. I do believe that this is for pro users to search, right? So I have not seen free users be able to be part of a space. If we're wrong, please let us know. That's not something that I found. And I do think that this is like skating a little thin line between custom GPTs and Anthropic projects, because you can like upload documents, you can give it kind of a system prompt, so that influences all the searches that get done in that context. And it's when Pages first came out, and Pages are a part of this, they're like a subset now of the space. When Pages first came out, we were looking at it like, oh, but I want to be able to edit that section, right? I want to be able to edit the I don't know, the spin that Perplexity used when it wrote the paragraph. This lets you upload documents so that you are editing it, right? You have some more ability to control the narrative of what's in that. So that I just wanted to make that clear distinction between what a company would use and that Spaces is actually also available outside of that kind of commonality.
Makes sense. So, Karl, why don't you take it from there with the internet search part of it? Oh, the internal, excuse me. I keep saying internet, internal search.
I think what he said in what Perplexity mentioned in their internal search page was that one of the number one requests, one of the most requested features is the ability to search in their documents as well. So organizations want to search in their documents. So that's obviously an opportunity for them. And I think if some of you know, there are enterprise search tools. From an AI search tool, one of the biggest ones is Glean, is one that you would know. But there are other internal search tools that are not AI. I think Google being one of them. If you are, like, for example, I think people overlook that if you are on Google Workspaces, Google Drive has a pretty decent internal knowledge search, kinda, but with AI search, now it has that RAG functionality as well. So, and the ability to search online and internal at the same time. So I'm not sure how that works because I believe it's only for Enterprise Pro users, but this is a very interesting play that they went this way. And I think going back to what Perplexity's original mission was I don't know, I think it still is a research tool. Everything from their pages to even how everything is laid out. It's one of the best, if not the best, online research tool you have out there that you can gather all this information really quickly. And I think I do believe that it is a answer engine, not a search engine, where there's a difference between what you're searching and then being able to yourself go to the sources versus an answer engine, which answers all this stuff for you. So two different uses, and I think they're taking this really well. I'm hoping some of the features that we see on the normal online search, where if you have a very specific, say for example, you have a very specific brand. So online, there's a term that SEOs normally use: know, go, do, right? You want to know something, you want to go somewhere, you want to do something. For the longest time, Perplexity had a difficulty with do and go. Yes, for the know part, it provides all that information for you, but I want to go somewhere. So I want to go to a specific brand or specific site. It gave you the answer, so it kind of didn't match until now when you actually put a very specific thing. It actually has it on top. I still don't think it's the best way to showcase it, but it's much better. And then to do something, that's the interesting part, because they have, so I think I've started seeing buy with one click, buy with Perplexity. So being able to do all that. So I'm curious to see how they can take some of those features and put it into an internal search where I don't want to just know about something. I think the focus more is I want to go do something. I want to go somewhere. So I want this specific file. I want this specific folder. I want 2023's, I don't know, CEO update, whatever that is. Can you find it for me? Or version 6.2.4 of final. I want to find this particular document. Can you find it for me? Mm-hmm. And then I'm curious to see if they have the do feature that I feel most large language models are going to have OpenAI's Canvas. So I'm curious to see if they're like, I want you to go into CEO message and I want to, from 2023, update it to this, combine it with this document and this, and now you have a new document. I'd be very curious if that's kind of what they're doing. So I remember I did take the demo from Glean, and they had different features from it. In addition to their big focus was internal doc search, but they had the chat assistant to it. So again, for me, I'm really, really excited about real-time API. So could you do everything by voice and ask it rather than type it out? I know for some people, like my business partner, he says he can't type worth anything. So he'd rather talk things through. So
since we announced the show, they've done 3 updates since then. And one of them is that they dropped the Mac app, right? So if you're on a Mac, you can download, you can get access to an app like ChatGPT also has a Mac app, but I believe you can use the voice of the Mac app.
Yep.
That's what all right. So yes, the answer is you can search with interaction.
Let me jump on Karl's comment about no, go, do. So my experience with Perplexity is that it has the go from the beginning, because every single bullet point in a response from Perplexity has a little citation marker with a number in it. You right-click on that number or just hover over it, but right-click on it, it'll open a new tab with the actual source URL. So I'm believing that on internal knowledge search, similarly, if you do a search and it's bringing back web references to what you're searching for and internal documents for it, all you have to do to go find that specific document is right-click on it and it'll open up a tab.
So what I meant was when, like the simple example is Nike. When originally when Perplexity came out, the go part is, if I type Nike, the intent of the search is I want to go to the Nike page, right? So, but what happened was it would give me the history of Nike.
The history of Nike.
Yes. Yeah, it would give you the answer of Nike. And you can, there is a source there. But what they've made it much better is when I type in Nike, Nike is on top where there's an icon that has Nike and you go to it rather with an image.
Typically, right.
Yeah.
They show the image of the
So it's much better.
I can understand how a single word prompt is going to get a little
I like Nike, and it's like from the Greek, It's
That's
Nike, like, oh my God, we went way back. There's 16 documentation citations that have nothing to do with the company.
Yeah, I want to point out something here. Gwyn is asking a question and then concluding that this is kind of very similar in respect of internal knowledge search we're talking about here to Teams plus SharePoint. So Teams is the collaborative part. SharePoint is the collective document store that the organization has. And, now Microsoft's added, co-pilots that allow you to navigate those with the help of an LLM. Yes, you're right. It's very similar in that respect. But I think the one thing that's missing, at least at the moment, maybe eventually co-pilots will do this, is the Bing search component. What Perplexity has built is a model that knows really how to integrate web search and internal knowledge search in a way that, searching your SharePoint files doesn't do. And brings it all together and can present something quite impressive in terms of a page that's a full presentation format delivery of what the fundamental question was. And you can then share that with your team or with other people inside the company.
Yeah, it's different flavors, right? I mean, if anybody has worked with SharePoint, God bless them, or Microsoft 365 or LinkedIn for that matter, which is a Microsoft product. I mean, the amount of times that Microsoft will step on their own foot is amazing. And I think a lot of people have had experiences like that. So will that eventually come? Will they have the equivalent of Search GPT, which is OpenAI's sort of kind of search maybe alternative to a Perplexity. We'll have to see. I mean, it's sort of like limited out there. I don't have access to it. But the Search GPT, what's the Bing version of that? How good is it at determining when it should look at local documents versus not? Is it any better or worse than a custom GPT? And then there's just like Google. Google's not the only search engine in the world, but it rose to the top. I'm imagining not only because people felt they were getting higher quality answers, but they also just like the UX, the UI of it. They like the way it felt because like otherwise, why didn't Netscape make it? Why didn't so-and-so make it? Why isn't Explorer better than, Chrome, right? And everybody has their reasons, I think to Gwen's point, Perplexity will obviously not be the only one that does this. Or they're not the only ones that are doing this. But maybe going back to Beth, what you originally said, people do like something new and fresh and clean looking, and Perplexity at the moment, not to say others could not do it, but at the moment has a different look and feel to it that feels easier, at least for me, to navigate and move around. The minute you introduce like a SharePoint and Teams into it, oh my God, I'm just like, I immediately feel dread. I immediately feel you're not going to make me go into SharePoint, are you? And go try to find this because it's just like a 1990s version of horror, So is Microsoft going to move fast enough to make a great product? I don't think so, because we can see what they have for 365 right now on Copilot, and they're clearly not that focused on this newer, modern version of what Perplexity is putting out there. So.
Right. If you think about it, right? So there are 4 big players in this context, and I'm given ChatGPT like a I don't know, charity seat as a big player, because it's not really a big player, but it is a big player in the AI search kind of thing. It needs to be in every conversation. ChatGPT, Microsoft, Google, all of those are functioning like huge organizations. Mm-hmm. A lot to lose because they're leaders in their respective sections, let's just say. And Perplexity is functioning like it's innovating on a dime kind of thing. What we have not said yet, and I feel like needs to be said, is Perplexity has its own like proprietary search that Andy was talking about, but all search uses they're using Google's information or Microsoft's information, right? Yeah. They're just doing it better, and they're not just a wrapper, but it would not be functional if it weren't for the search engines underneath that they're using for. Yeah, Karl.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that that's a criticism of Perplexity is, all it's really doing is going to the top 10 to 15 sites from Google, summarizing it before you see it and putting it on a page. And you got to think to yourself, like, I don't know, is it? Like, is that all we're really looking at? Or is there something proprietary to it? I err on the side that I think there's something more proprietary to it on the way that they decide what information is brought back to the user and how it's organized and what citations are used. But I agree with you that it's still using the search functionality of like Google or Bing or maybe others. And then they're layering on top of that their user experience, which ultimately could be the one that rises to the top. I mean, it could be. I want to talk really quick about this this use case that I thought of immediately for Spaces. Now, Spaces, I think right now it's kind of being built as this enterprise, but there are a lot of ways that this could quickly be super, super valuable to people outside of like the enterprise company edition. Number one, our podcast, right? You could quickly see how, Beth, you talked about pages when they first came out, how we could quickly create not only internal, but then share them externally, spaces where we curate information that's a mix of Perplexity search and what we've talked about on 320 shows. So it's probably like 319 or something like that, right? 320 shows. We have 40 minutes of talking about AI topics times 320, right? So we have a lot of content. As we said, Beth, like the other night, we're not lacking data. We have too much that we're trying to deal with at the moment. Spaces could give us a really great way to both organize and enhance that for not only us internally, which may reveal new show ideas, new concepts that maybe we have thought about, hybrid concepts of shows that are a bit of this, that, and the other, that Perplexity may reveal to us just simply by its ability to look through the data. But I also want to use another example of education, because I'm going to read it directly off the other screen instead of trying to share it. But it says school study group, and this is like in a space. And it says, can you summarize the main points from last week's lecture on reinforcement learning? What are the common mistakes students make on problem set 3 based on lecture materials and the public web more broadly? And how can I avoid them? And so I immediately read that and I thought, okay, well, here's not $1 million idea, but way back when I was in college between 96 and 2000 at the University of Georgia, we had red notes. Now, I was not smart enough to make red notes, but there were students who were being paid to take very, very good notes in class. And then you could go to a place downtown with a little wooden door that was sort of nondescript, and you could go in there and you could buy said notes from the A student. Now, I did this all the time, and they were called red notes because they were black text printed on red paper. Why? Because it doesn't work in a copy machine. You can't put a red paper in it just comes out completely black, right? So that was their way of ensuring that everybody had to buy their own version of notes. But I did this all the time because I was a good student, but I wasn't an A+ student. And I definitely wanted to know what the A+ student was putting in their notes. And so good for them, good for me. Happy to buy it. And that student was probably getting whatever their kickback was for creating those notes and having to be in attendance every single day. Okay, now we have the modern version of that. Now we can have students that not only take A+ notes, but they can import them into Perplexity spaces, and based on the model and their parameters of when they set up that space, determine how they want it to function. So now you actually do have this heightened study guide that any student could really put together for any particular topic. You could go to UGA and say, this is the level 201, astronomy course, on such and such, and here's the space for it. And I've curated this with not only notes, maybe past notes, the way this particular professor likes to give out studies and guides, and they do surprise exams, and how would you be best prepared for that? Plus all the internet search that could go on top of that. You've got a business model for any student to create something that they can easily sell access to for other students.
And what we're talking about, so the people listening may not all be students, but that curation feature, we are all students of life. We are really students of life. I'm not really saying that. But the curation feature is something to be paying attention to as you are looking at use cases for Perplexity, and specifically Perplexity spaces, in being able to share your vision. Because what we are at the internet was already pretty chock full, but what we are at the start of is a massive data rebrand kind of stuff, because it's so easy to create now. It's so easy to create bad takes and just use to do exactly this, but use synonyms for all your words, right? Where that the ability to do that, 15 of those in half a second is here. So your role as someone who knows something about your own expertise, what you know, what you do, is now a role of curation, and Spaces is giving you an opportunity to do that. Right. So that's where we're starting to move. In the age of data overwhelm, people will look to others as curators. And in fact, that's what this show is. So please subscribe and come back and do all of the things. But that's really where I see the opportunities as use cases for business.
Wait, you got to give me the update, Beth. You got to give me a heads up that that's coming.
Oh, sorry.
I can get the QR code on the screen in time. But just a quick pause here. If you do enjoy these types of conversations, or perhaps because you just were interested in Perplexity, you joined us for the very first time. As I mentioned earlier, this is, I think, our 319th show. I think tomorrow's 320. I might be off by 5 on that. Does that sound right, Beth?
Yep.
Yeah, Beth does a transcript, so you would know. So this is 319, and we do this Monday through Friday. We do it live at 10 a.m. Eastern, but of course, you might be watching us on replay, or just because you found us, in, because you did a search for Perplexity or otherwise inside of YouTube. But these are the type of conversations we are having every single day. So if you're interested in finding out more, obviously you can go search for us on anywhere that you're getting your podcasts, and you'll find our show there. But you could also sign up for our newsletter if you like these types of deep dives. I'd like to think we're different than the typical AI newsletters out there that are more or less trying to be first or have a different take on whatever the news of yesterday was. And I think what we try to do is we try to come at it as professionals, as people who've been in the workforce for several years, in a variety of years, and in different industries. We all come at it from a different way, and we try to bring that knowledge and say, okay, this is how we're looking at what's currently happening and how we're projecting what we think is coming in the future. And we want to share those insights with our audience. And also, we never come across as trying to be, quote unquote, the expert at the time we're talking about. A lot of times it's about joining us for the conversation. And you can do that live actually on YouTube by joining us when we are live at 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. We haven't missed a Monday through Friday yet, barring all holidays, hurricanes, and otherwise. Somebody has always been here to do the show live. So you could always join us and hang out on there. So just want to do that. You can go to that QR code and sign up for the newsletter on there. And before we jump back into the conversation real quick and start, wrapping up and getting to the end here, Beth, I really do want to highlight what you just said, because I think it was so insightful. And you said, we're becoming curators, or we're moving towards curation. I want to paraphrase what you said. And that really was a light bulb for me as you said that, because I thought, I really fixate a lot, not only for me and my job. Like I'm 46. So like, what does the next 20 years of work look like for me until the quote unquote retirement of 65? I don't think that's happening, but whatever. The next 20 years of work for me, what does it mean for me, and how do I have to pivot? But then I also put the dad hat on as a dad of a 13-year-old, and I say, what does she have to do, right? And I'm always trying to think of these things like, what would you tell a 13-year-old today? Where would you tell them to focus? We used to say, go be a coder. A kid's not going to hurt you. These kind of things. And now today we may say, I don't know if I'd spend a whole lot of time there, but definitely understand the basics. But what you're saying is learn how to be a curator. And I think that is something we could all take as a task and say, how could I get better at curation? How can I get better at creating more? And then using my critical thinking skills as the expert sitting in this role to determine what's the best of it. Because to your point, creating 30 versions of anything is no longer a problem. I can create 30 versions of it, but is that what my boss wants? Is that what's going to help move the company forward? Is that what's going to help generate new ROI? No, it's going to be my ability to sift through, or use LLMs or other AI tools to sift through that data and curate it in a way that makes sense and actually moves the ball forward. So I just wanted to call that out, because I thought it was that's a light bulb for me. And I think it's a great way of explaining what the kind of skill sets people need to have.
So I wanted to say that these new features are available only if you're a subscriber to Perplexity Pro or you're an Enterprise Pro customer. But here's an argument for those of you who are sitting on the fence about Perplexity. I've personally been advocating Perplexity Pro for a long time. It's one of the few subscriptions I maintain. I also subscribe to ChatGPT because there's a lot of different features and functions that are available there that aren't necessarily available in Perplexity, but Perplexity has an honored place in my system. But here's the real value proposition. You pay the same amount as getting ChatGPT. If you just use ChatGPT, you're not building custom GPTs and that sort of thing. You're just using it as an answering system or as a research system. You get GPT-4o in Perplexity Pro. It's a selectable LLM model in there, and you can do anything that you can ask on ChatGPT's browser interface right through Perplexity. It also offers both of the most important pieces of the Anthropic model set. Claude 3.5 Sonnet updated, the most recent one that just came out a couple days ago, that's in Perplexity now, as is Claude 3 Opus. So when Claude 3.5 Opus comes out, which will be their really large model based on the advances that the Claude 3.5 Sonnet development campaign have achieved. Great. Then in addition to all that, they have their own Llama 3.1405 billion based Sonar Huge model that's trained by Perplexity to do the things that some of the people in the chat have been asking, like, does Perplexity just return results, or how is it deciding which ones to return in order to deliver that? Well, in search generally, what you want to do is you want to sift and sort down to the most authoritative sources of the answers to the questions. And I think this is what Perplexity is really focused on in their development years leading up to this moment. You're going to see that what they bring back is probably based on multiple signals. It's not filled with junk at all. It's going to be the very best results. And an attestation to that is I often use Perplexity to do the basic research for a purchase. And I know Karl has done this before, and he's given examples of this on the show. But if you use Perplexity and you say, here, go out and find me the best, that's all you have to say, the best alternatives for this product, it's going to come back and it's ranked those based on a whole host of things. And what you see happen on the screen with Perplexity is it takes that request and it breaks it down into steps. It's doing chain of thought processing. And then it runs those searches independently, all of those individual steps independently, brings all the context back, and then delivers you the text answers with little circular numbered citations. Again, you can go to the source directly from the results page. I think this is much, much better than Google. And I prefer it over Google. I still love Google. I use Google in lots of different ways, but Perplexity, I think, is the lead.
And I'll claim it on here. You can go back and watch one of the shows where I'm kind of like, man, I don't know about Perplexity. And Andy, you were the first person to really sort of tipped me towards, maybe it was on the show. It was like we were live on the show, and I was like, I think I'm wrong. I think I'm wrong about this. And it was Andy, you talking and like working just as you just did for everybody, sort of working through how you were using the product. And I don't know how many months ago this is or whatever, but I kind of was like, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't even playing devil's advocate. I was like, yeah, I don't know if I really see it. Can I just do this here, here, here? And you really sort of laid it out. So I think there's a good question in here from Gwen, who is asking the question, because we're talking about, hey, pay for this, pay that. So how much is everyone spending on AI tools? It's a good question, Gwen. And this is something we actually did a show about where we said like, hey, I think it was a hypothetical $100 a month, not necessarily that we were all spending that, but we said, how would you best spend $100? It's probably time to do that show again, because these tools change, where you're going to put your time. My answer to that real quick, Gwen, is I currently do not pay for Perplexity Pro, but I will tell you it's going to happen like this week. I pay for ChatGPT. I pay for Canva. Let's call that an AI tool.
Let's save the rest for the show that we're going to do sometime soon.
We will. I just wanted to see what my answer was really quick. I don't know what the answer, the wrap up is on that, Gwen, but like not $100 a month. That's where I'm at right now, because you do have to be pick and choose. And I'm also very lucky with this show that if I don't have something like a Replit or Cursor on there, Karl or Beth or Andy does. And so I can lean on them and be like, hey, how are you guys using this? So we do have the advantage of the show where we have the 7 of us. And we're able to get insights and information because probably one of us does have access to it. Oh, Opus Clip too. I would say Opus Clip is a huge one for AI and what we're doing with the show and stuff like that. Okay, you had a Karl. Don't know about that. Yeah, go for it, Karl.
Yeah, there's 2 things that I just wanted to cover too. One is the ability of Perplexity to do more even complex reasoning. I think they're using O1 Mini. I'm not quite sure if they're using preview version, but O1 Mini is there for more complex. I haven't used Perplexity for really in-depth searches because I usually would be going to O1 preview, but with internet capabilities, I haven't really converted my brain to thinking that way, but I really want to.
So I just want to jump in to annotate what you're saying. The Perplexity has the ability to focus the kind of search that you're doing, and you do get O1 mini searches. There are 10 of them that you can use in a focus, but they also just dropped a new, more reasoning model. Go, sorry.
Yeah. And then the second thing that I wanted to get into was, I think most of us like Perplexity because there's no ads on it. And to sustain the model, I was a little bit, oh God, what is that? What am I going to be? What can I see here? And Aravind actually like reassured, because the worst thing that you could do is with the actual search results have sponsored or advertised parts of the results, which then throws the whole thing out of whack, because then it's like, wait a minute, what is actually paid for and what is generated and what's actually the real search. So that was the worry. But what they mentioned was they will now have related. So when you scroll down, you have related searches. Some of those will be paid for, and you can actually start using Perplexity paid search. That's pretty expensive, but I can't remember, but it's quite a lot per, I think 1,000 impressions or something like that. So that is an interesting model, but that's great because I don't care about, I want to make sure what happened to Google, where you have ads at the top, ads in the middle, ads at the bottom, ads on the right-hand side, and it's full of ads and you can't get to the actual organic stuff. While Perplexity, for now, the whole thing feels kind of authentic. So we'll see where ads come down, and then we'll also see 5 years down the road how will they balance, hey, you know what, we can make even more money if we do this. And I feel Google kind of had, like, the amount of money they're making from ads all over the place. The whole thing feels like an ad platform, like it is an ad platform, and I think that's why people are turned off. So I'm curious to see what Perplexity will do and if they can maintain that, not even a balance, like overwhelmingly more towards what it was originally designed to do.
What was it, Karl? Like 15 years ago when Mark Zuckerberg said Facebook will be free forever, and everybody went like, oh, that's nice. And that's fantastic. I'll never have to pay for Facebook. And then we all learned what he meant by free. Yeah. We've learned through the years, everybody has learned what free truly means, and it doesn't mean free. So we'll have to see, like, what types of terms. I mean, we see this with the AI newsletters, where the verbiage of what is sponsored, it doesn't always say sponsored. Sometimes it says in conjunction with our partners, and you have to think to yourself, like, does that mean sponsored? Because it does start to, and I'm not going to call it into the AI newsletters, but there's at least 2 of them where I am less likely to read them now because it's not super clear when they are talking about sponsored content or not. They've got really, really cagey with their verbiage. And I actually find that to be a disservice. I would much rather you just say, of course we have sponsors. We're trying to build something here. That's just the way it goes. And I go, great. I don't mind reading your content. I don't mind that it's there. Or to your point, Karl, a well-defined sponsored follow-up search on Perplexity. You know what? If you're a sneakerhead and Nike wants to pay for a follow-up search in a creative way, and they want to pay for that, as long as I know it's coming from Nike, but maybe it speaks to me as somebody who collects speed. I don't. So I'm talking out of my head here, but like if I was somebody who likes sneakers and, whatever, and I wanted to know how this version compared to that version or whatever, there's some really creative ways that Nike could probably spend lots of their billions of dollars to help with follow-up searches. I have no problem with that on Perplexity. Just, I think to your point, I just want to know that it's happening. Don't try to pull the wool over my eyes. Like that bothers me because
like Google makes, like, it used to be you could see the ads, like it was pretty well. It's like really, like it has a different background color. It said sponsored. Yeah. Now that they're like, can you make it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller? It fits exactly like everything else. And it's like, but most people are trained to it, right? Your first 3 results, everybody knows that's going to be ads. Most people would scroll down. I still can't understand, but then it becomes the whole point, and this is more of an ad thing. why would you spend on your own brand if you did it correctly? Because it's just people who are lazy who don't want to scroll to your brand, and it's your like, oh, it's preventing other people from bidding on it. But it's like, well, you're paying Google a just in case fee. It's just almost like, oh my God, this company is making hand over fist. There's no way they want to change that back. It's impossible. When you make that many billions, it's like you feed too many people to revert. And that's why I'm like, I hope Perplexity just levels the market and we start from scratch again.
Yeah. Well, I want to end on this comment from Jude. This show is still free, and I just want to add a right now.
For $9.99.
Okay, all of you stop talking. If you are interested in sponsoring the show, please reach out to us at Daily AI.
Yeah, tomorrow's show will be about Perplexity's main competitor, and we'll all talk about it with a little teeny tiny sponsored in the corner, and we'll tell you why we love it and why you should sign up with our sign up code and bonus and all that. And listen, man, we have mouths to feed too, so we're trying to grow this as well. All right, so look, we got to leave it there. I'll stop talking. I also I think it was Jude or Justin. I think it was Jude's comment that said they were talking about our upcoming shows, and I think it was Jude. I hope I'm saying that right. That said, I heard show 360 will come full circle. That is a dad joke if I've ever heard one, but it made me laugh, so I just wanted to call it out. And by my calculations, show 360, the full circle show, should be on December 20th. So we got a few before then, but make sure you keep coming back for our full circle show. I'm sure we'll do something funny in the title of that, right? Okay. There we go. Let me pull it back. All right, we got to wrap this up. We've gone over 50 minutes. We got to stop. Come on back tomorrow, guys. Tomorrow we are talking about, Beth, just tell them because I'm going to mess up the name. Machines of Loving Grace by
Dario Amodei.
Dario Amodei. Exactly how I was going to say it. All right. That's what we got tomorrow, guys. Have a great day, and we'll see you then.